Welcome to the Black Girls Heal podcast, where we talk about changing unavailable relationship patterns, healing unresolved trauma, and building a healthy relationship with first you and then others. Every episode, we will talk about actionable advice that you can apply today to break unhealthy patterns and grow your self-worth. I'm Sheena Tubbs. Let's begin. Hello, ladies, and welcome to the latest episode of Black Girls Heal. I hope that this finds you well, that you're having a great day, and that you are super excited about the third piece of the Healed and Loved Woman framework coming at you today. So we have been in the middle of a series where I am talking about our model that I am going to be teaching more out of forever, or actually the model that all of my teachings have just been building up to, but putting it together in a way that I'm really excited about, to have women know what is their journey to become a healed and loved woman, which is what we all want and desire, or I hope that's what you want and desire if you're listening to this podcast. So I've already gone over the first two components. I did the first component of the Healed and Loved Woman framework in episode 82, talking about going from being love addicted to love balanced. And I talked about the second component of the framework in episode 83, going from love avoidant to love available. And today I'm going to talk about the third component of going from love deprived and living in love deprivation to living in our love worthiness. So this is going to be so awesome. Can't wait to explain it to you. So each episode, I give you three components of what it is to live in the before, which is love deprivation for today, and what it's like to three components of what it is to live in the after, which is love worthiness. But before I do that, I need to tell you about love deprivation in general. So as you know, I teach about intimacy disorders, and one intimacy disorder is love addiction, another one is love avoidance, and another type of intimacy disorder is love deprivation, aka love anorexia or sexual anorexia. I have recently, over the last year, decided to rename love anorexia to love deprivation, even though people in my community have not done that and don't plan to do that, just because I want to respect any woman who has struggled with eating disorders, and I just want to put some respect on that, even though there is definitely an indulge and binging cycle, which I'm going to talk about, but I just wanted to not have that be a distraction or feel triggering for anyone who may want to learn more. So all that said, love deprivation is when you will compulsively avoid giving or receiving nourishment, whether that nourishment is emotional nourishment, physical nourishment, sexual, social. It can be one of those, all of those, a couple of those, but it's basically you living in deprivation of your needs and not giving voice to it because you have this deep, intense fear of being rejected, abandoned, and also having shame for the needs that you have. So you go and you avoid and restrict it altogether. You may desperately crave love, but fear and have anxiety around what it means to actually get there. Right? You can have some overlap in some of the other things I've already talked about with love avoidance and love addiction. That's probably the first question I get whenever I reintroduce or I introduce intimacy disorders to people for the first time. I'll get a DM or a question in the chat if it's a live video or something saying, can you be both? And the answer is absolutely. You can absolutely be all of these because they all interchange. But some of the overlap that you can have if you struggle with love deprivation is just like a love avoidance. So you fear the engulfment and the suffocation, and you fear loss of self if you get attached to someone because you've never had an example of what healthy love is. But you might fear your own sexual body. You might feel your own sexuality. And so you will live in restriction from what you actually want, which is different than those who identify as asexual. People who are asexual have no desire, period. And people who live in love deprivation is you do have desire for sexual pleasure and sexual health, but you have shame and fear around your body, around sexual connection, and all the things that come with that. But you might have fear about starting a relationship. You might have fear about exiting a relationship. And you definitely have fear about people seeing you for who you are. And so again, people who live in love deprivation might isolate. These are my ladies who definitely have a lot of fantasy, because it is safe to connect to yourself in your head versus going out for what you want. You're grown and you have sexual needs. So if you're not connecting to other people, you might find an overindulgence in pornography, or I've worked with women who are compulsive masturbators, or things that are just off kilter for what would be normal and healthy and functioning for you. But you might, to that point, just because you struggle with love deprivation and being attuned to your sexual needs, I've also worked with women who might numb out with sexuality. So over connecting with people and hookups, and because you don't know how to connect with people, you will use hookups and all of that as a replacement to try to get your fix. And for my ladies who are sex positive, I just want to be very clear. Well, first, we should all be sex positive, but especially for my women who are very much advocates of it, this is different than who are attuned to our sexual needs. We may say, you know what, I just need to get laid. And you are attuned to that, you know your intentions behind it, you're able to choose the partner you want and go for it, versus this compulsion around, I just need to be touched. And there's more anxiety and trauma and self-medication that's underneath that, versus a true empowerment and true connection to, I'm a woman, I have needs, these are the needs that I want, and this is how I want them fulfilled, and I'm actively choosing it versus feeling compelled to do it. So hopefully that makes sense. One thing for you to look out for is if after hookups, like if you think this might be you, if after hookups you feel a lot of intense shame and emptiness afterwards, and with the shame you'll need to look at, is this coming from some kind of internalized spiritual trauma, which is what I hear most often with women when it comes to just feeling blocked in their sexuality and being able to own it, along with, of course, sexual trauma. But it can also be because you thought that you wanted to connect and go out and be with people, be with partners, because you're trying to own your sexuality, but it's because you weren't being honest that what you actually wanted, and you weren't aware of what you actually wanted, was to truly be nurtured and touched and seen and caressed and loved on. And that is something that you're not getting with all these hookups, no matter how hot the person is, no matter how good it is, no matter how many times you're able to orgasm afterwards, you're still not feeling it. And that actually makes you feel worse, and it makes you feel more empty. And along with that, there's like low self-worth and all that stuff. So I'm definitely getting into the three components of the before, but because I haven't spent a lot of time talking about love deprivation in detail, I wanted to explain it a little bit more so that people know what this is. One more thing about deprivation before I move into the components. So many women struggle with love deprivation without knowing that they're doing that, because the things that they're focusing on to isolate are things that look good on paper and look good to the public and might actually be related to their own personal goals. But again, it's in excess because you're forsaking your actual needs. So, for example, I will work with women who will go long periods of time neglecting their own emotional health and their own mental health and their own sexual or social needs because they are focusing on their children. So they will go years and years and decades even focus on taking care of everybody else and neglecting themselves when really they have their own needs that need to be met, and they don't know that you can do both, or that it's not even a thing that they want to consider because maybe they've tried before and been disappointed. So it's easier and they find more purpose in the moment, even though it's a long moment, taking care of someone else. Also, self-love detoxes can be a form of isolation for some people. If you are doing a self-love detox because your heart has been broken, or you've been betrayed by a friend or betrayed by family, and you're like, you know what, I just need to forget everybody and focus on myself, that sounds great. However, healthy, balanced women are able to be in relationship too. So the complete removal of other people altogether does not teach you how to connect with people in a way that doesn't lose yourself, to make sure that you're choosing people that are healthy for you so that you don't have to keep going on these detoxes from people, because every time you connect to someone, you connect to people who use you, or connect to people who don't listen to you or take from you or cheat on you, or, shut you down and just want you to be their puppet. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that it can show up in your relationships. But yes, those of us who are like, I'm just going to focus on me, and you forget about people for years and years on end, that is more of a sign to living in deprivation to what is a real basic need of you as a human, which is to connect. All right. Woo! So that's a lot. So I'm about to get into the 3 befores, and I'm going to get into the 3 components of the afters. There will definitely be some overlap, I'm sure. But again, I just wanted to give that first explanation. This is the framework, by the way, that I will be teaching at our conference this October. We have 8 spots left for women who want to and work on this together in person. There will be a day committed to each one of these components to make sure that you return home with healing and transformation, and it not to just be a phase. So would love to have you there. If you're one of those who are like, that's me, I need one of those 8 spots, would love to have you. You can go to blackgirlsheal.org/conference to join us. So with that said, the first component of living in love deprivation is the extreme fear of rejection. It is, no one likes feeling disappointed or hurt or, told no. But for someone who struggles with love deprivation, you have an intense feeling of shame and unworthiness that shows up in your fear of rejection. So you will not go out for relationships, go out for things, make your interests known. You will avoid even admitting that you have these desires yourself, because it's kind of too painful to admit to yourself because of the longing and the yearning that might come along with it. And it's because of that fear. So that is living in love deprivation, what it looks like on that side, versus when a woman is living in her love worthiness, instead of fearing rejection, she desires closeness. So because she knows that she's worthy, because she knows that she is valuable, because she knows that she is special just because of who she is, the fear of being rejected is not really a major factor, right? I think it is normal that in certain situations, as we grow and we expand and we change, that there is a level of like, oh, I'm nervous. Like, what if they don't like me, or what if this? That can happen for some people. For some people, it's like, no, I'm good. That doesn't happen at all. I just want to validate that sometimes that can happen, because I know we can be in extremes and say, man, if I have this feeling at all, does that mean that I don't love myself? The fact that you have that awareness and that you're working on it is great. But a woman who knows her worth and knows that she is worthy of receiving love, desires to be close to people, and is open to being close to people. She can receive that closeness with others and also initiate it too, because she trusts that love is available for her. A woman who struggles with love deprivation, the second component is the high sense of carried shame, which I kind of alluded to with the first point. So our low self-worth, those of us who struggle with love deprivation, comes from childhood trauma. It comes from shame that may have been projected onto us from other people. It absolutely always comes from our needs being neglected. So whenever we are in touch with just a little piece of our need, we feel shame and we feel guilty, and we wonder if we're asking for too much or wanting too much, and we will avoid it. Sometimes the high functioning way of having shame for your needs will look like talking yourself out of going for things that you want, and putting it off until later. You're able to rationalize why whatever you want to invest in or go out for, this is not the right time for it, that you will do it later. If you struggle with love worthiness, you have an upper cap limit of how much you think you're worth. Whether that worth is measured in time, whether that worth is measured in money, whether that cap is measured in affection, you are able to justify and rationalize with bullet points usually why your upper cap with money makes sense, because you're financially sound and you are building generational wealth. And so it is unwise to spend X amount on yourself. So it doesn't matter if the thing that you're not investing on is a new bra and you're going too long without getting a new bra because you quote unquote don't have the money for it, or driving around in a busted car, or you've heard me say just buying what you actually want at a restaurant because you have an upper limit on how much you are worth. And so you're constantly living in deprivation and constantly living in just enough. And you tell yourself that one day something will happen where I feel more sound and more in the place where I feel like I can invest in myself. But what I'm telling you is it doesn't matter where you are, how much money you make, what situation you are, you're going to carry your own sense of self-worth with you wherever you go. The same thing with the upper limit in time, whether or not you are worth taking a break, taking a luxurious bubble bath just because, taking time out for yourself, right? How much you feel like you're worth in a relationship, how much is just enough affection versus what you're actually worth, which is why you will stay in relationships with unavailable people who are ignoring you and neglecting you for longer than you need, because your upper limit tells you that, okay, this is how much I'm actually worth, and if they give me a little bit of a crumb that's over that upper limit, then I'll take that instead of actually going for what you actually deserve. So I'm going to share a story that's on my mind because I had a call with ladies who were interested in working together last night, and the subject of investing in ourselves came up. And so I shared more details of a story that I've shared in part here on the podcast. So my first big investment in myself was maybe four or 5 years ago. I can't remember, but it was several years ago. And up until that time, I had a very distinct and small upper limit. So my first big self-development investment in myself that was not business related, that was not family related, that was just purely for me and just about me feeling better, was a course called Money Bootcamp by Denise Duffield Thomas. The course is all about healing money wounds and money trauma and working through learning how to manifest and being abundant and all that stuff. And I knew, just because of things that were going on around me at that time, that is something that